Yo, what's good, everybody? Welcome to Unfair Sports with me, your host, Jay, where we take a pensive approach to the sports conversation. We appreciate you all tuning in as usual. Make sure you check us out wherever podcasts are downloaded and listened to. While you are there, please rate us and review us and give us 5 stars. If you don't think we deserve it, let's go ahead and give us 5 anyway and gift it. So on today's episode of Unfair with me, Jay, I'm going to talk to you all about the NBA playoffs and how Chris Paul really wanted that MVP trophy. The NCAA had a really busy week, but they're trying to bury some news in by bringing out other news. And so we'll talk about all of that coming up right now. Make sure you hit us up on the Unfair Fan Line, 430-901-1906, and leave us a message and let us know what you think about our takes. We love feedback. We love hearing strong opinions, and that makes us better. It molds us and makes us into better fans. So hit us up, 430-901-1906, as well as check out our YouTube page. Most of our shows are also on the YouTube channel. So go to unfair-sports.com and you can see the links to all of our syndications. Let me start off with this. This has been a crazy week for me. Allergies, weather, stuff up and down, and as well as some superb NBA playoff basketball. I'm pretty excited about what we've got to enjoy so far. It's been superb. And with that, there's a great chance that we will have a first-time champion or a team winning a chip for the first time in a lot of our lifetimes, mainly myself, because I'm in my late 30s. We get to see these teams win these chips that we haven't seen before. So the Lakers, of course, are eliminated. The other LA team is still around. The Jazz are whooping up on them. You got the Suns and the Denver Nuggets, and it looks like Chris Paul is snatching chains. We have Philadelphia and Atlanta really going back and forth, and it's kind of fun to watch, especially all of the noise talk and chatter between the two. And then you've got Brooklyn just demolishing the Milwaukee Bucks to start, and then Milwaukee coming back and saying, we can buckle down too if we really want to. So it's been fun. It's been something that I am glad that we as basketball fans are getting to enjoy. It's not something that is the blowouts for the Brooklyn games are probably the only ones that were kind of meh for a lot of us. The rest of the games have actually been thoroughly enjoyable, with Donovan Mitchell having comebacks and just putting up massive numbers, Devin Booker cooking, Chris Paul doing work. It's been good for the game that these games are going on, even though a lot of us feared that the popularity would kind of wane off because of who's actually left. Didn't feel like that's the case. But with this one, I want to talk about Chris Paul and the conversation around MVP, and then Donovan Mitchell being the best Jazz player to ever play the game. So Chris Paul and the Suns are now up, 3-0 against the Denver Nuggets. So they have begun the process of actually cooking them boys, and I would say that I'm surprised, but I'm not. The Nuggets have lost Jamal Murray, and I think that Michael Porter Jr. has hit the point where he's hit his wall in the playoffs. I think he tweaked his back in game 1, and ever since then he's been playing pretty atrociously compared to what he was doing in the first couple rounds. Not really shading that man. It's just he's just not playing good basketball right now. So people have been going on social media asking the question if Chris Paul should have got MVP because of the performance that's going on today. And believe me when I say this, Chris Paul has been cooking. And in my eyes, Chris Paul is hands down the 3rd best point guard in NBA history. Unfortunately for him, he will never surpass Magic Johnson in my eyes, or Zeke, Isaiah Thomas, ever. Those two, in my opinion, will always be the best in what they did at the time and what they did for their teams. There's nothing about it. I mean, John Stockton still has also a really good argument, even though a lot of people don't they shade anybody from Utah. Stockton has an argument to be up there. He's at least in the top 5, but Chris Paul to me is the third best. He's behind those two. And you put Chris Paul on a team, he is a game changer. He's a team changer. You put him on a roster, and he's going to go out there and make that team a hell of a lot better than they were before. And that's something that we can applaud and be excited about. But at the same time, we don't need to try to pretend like it's more than what it really is. That Phoenix scenario that he's in right now is perfect for him. Right now, he's at an outstanding playoffs with an absurd assist turnover ratio. I mean, so far in this series, he's got 34 assists with 3 turnovers, which is like a 10-ish to 1 ratio. Ridiculous. And he had that game not too long ago, 15 assists, 1 turnover. The first game, he had 11 assists, 0 turnovers. He had 2 assists, 2 turnovers the last game, but he was putting up more points in those games. So he's dropping everything. He's putting up numbers. He's ridiculous. And he's looking healthier than ever, which I'm very happy for him on. Because he's dealt with injuries the last 6-7 years to where every time they get deep enough, something happens and he's out. And so barring injury, this dude's going to make the conference championship for the second time in 4 years. He went with Houston 3 years ago, 3 years ago. And then playoffs with Houston, got out second round, and he went to Oklahoma City, didn't make it out the first round because of a really, really young squad. And now with Phoenix, they're probably going to sweep Denver, unfortunately for Denver, which is going to give Chris Paul the rest he needs going into the conference championship to hopefully make sure that, no, knock on wood, injuries derail the type of season he's having. And he's also gone twice to the conference championships, 2 times more than what the LA Clippers have in their lifetime. So he might have brushed off the curse of the Clippers that he's had because, you know, he was their star there. He was doing big things with Lob City, and he just couldn't get past the second round. So maybe we'll get to see Chris Paul in the finals. I'm rooting for Phoenix. I want to see Phoenix go to the NBA Finals. It'd be awesome to see them go up against the Milwaukee Bucks or the Brooklyn Nets. I think one of those two teams are going to go. I am amped at the idea of that. But with that being said, Chris Paul is not the MVP of this season. Nikola Jokic, my apologies, Nikola Jokic is the MVP. Point blank, period. Chris Paul made some big differences for the Suns team. He opened up DeAndre Ayton to getting even better. Devin Booker is, of course, going to do Devin Booker things. But the problem that Phoenix has always had is they needed an actual point guard that could control the offense and let Devin Booker play better off ball and occasionally bring the ball up. Because Devin Booker was playing point guard basically his entire career, but he's better off the ball and then going back and forth. So that's one of the bigger things. I wanted Chris Paul going there takes that weight away from him and it leads him into bigger things. But that doesn't make him MVP. It makes Phoenix a really good team with him because Phoenix was 8-0 in the bubble, and they looked like they had a chance to maybe make the playoffs if they had to play in like it was set up last year, where you didn't have to have a ratio, a certain amount of games in between teams. Phoenix probably would have made the playoffs. They probably would have knocked out Portland. I'm just going to say that now. But they're looking great. But the thing about the MVP trophy is, and this is why Nikola Jokic got it, it's really a narrative-based award. Now, hear me out on this. Hear me out. Some people are saying that, of course, that's a BS thought process, but it's usually always wrapped around something historic or absurd numbers, leader of a dominant team, or just something we've never seen before. Like players like Jordan and LeBron and even Kobe in their days, or even Shaq, could have probably won MVP just about every year that they were at their peaks because they were probably the best players in the league. MVP trophy doesn't go to the best player in the league. It goes to the one that made the biggest impact for their team. And now, with Chris Paul leading his team to a 2 seed, you can't argue that. But it was more of a team effort than it was just what Jokic is doing. And this is why Jokic gets it, because I think the historical feats is it's like tiers to it. You know what I'm saying? There's a tier to which ones are more important. I think historical feats are always number one. Then you've got right behind that the leader of a dominant team. Things we've never seen before is probably third, and then I think absurd numbers takes the 4th slot. That's kind of how we rank it. If Chris Paul had averaged 20 assists this season, he was MVP. It was his. Even averaging only 13 points. If he would have averaged 20 assists, he got it. And if he had shot at 50, 40, 90, he would have got it guaranteed as well. But Jokic is a big man. These are the numbers he gave us. Let me read these to you. This season, he averaged 26.4 points a game, 10.8 rebounds, 8.3 assists, while shooting 57% from the field, 37 from three, and 87 from the free throw line. Name me a big man that's shooting like that at those clips, even shooting 37% from three on a minimum 3 shots a game, averaging 3 shots a game, while doing all the other numbers with the assists and the rebounds. He wasn't one-dimensional. He was everything. Everything ran through him, and you can tell when teams just let him only score and took away his playmaking ability, the team dropped. No one else could pick up the slack. That was proven. Well, now, Jokic walked in. I mean, that was what? Against Portland, game 1 of the playoffs this year. He had 1 assist. Got the doors blown off of him. Jokic MVP. And so it feels like Chris Paul basically walked in there in this series thinking, just like Hakeem Olajuwon did in the 94-95 playoffs between Houston and San Antonio, looked at David Robinson and said, I'm taking my MVP trophy back. Because Olajuwon was the MVP the year before, and then the next year David Robinson got it. And Hakeem took, offense to that. He should have got back-to-backs. They won back-to-back championships if he thought that he should have had it. Even though numbers-wise, he had an argument to get back-to-back MVPs. But if you look at some of the advanced numbers, David Robinson kind of could have won both MVP trophies. But we're not going to talk about that. For the most part, the biggest thing was Olajuwon was dominant those 2 seasons. He got Defensive Player of the Year as well in 94. So you would think that, the repeat could have happened kind of like Giannis did. But his team didn't have the best record. They kind of fell down due to injury. So it hurt him. But what he decided to do in the playoffs is he decided to go run up on him, snatch his trophy. And that's what Chris Paul is doing right now. Chris Paul is out there snatching his trophy. He wants his trophy. He wants an MVP trophy. He wants to show y'all that he deserves it. And that's why he's walking in here and actually doing everything in this series that he wasn't really doing in the last one. Like, for example, against the Lakers, Chris Paul averaged he had 7 points, 6 points, 7 points, 18 in one game, 9, and then 8 points. The rest of them were mainly assists. He only had 1 double-digit assist game. Against Denver, oh, look at what he's doing now. 21 with 11 assists, 6 rebounds, 17 with 15 assists, 5 rebounds. And in the last game, 27 points, 8 assists, 6 rebounds. While shooting 57, 60, 56% from the field, roughly 70% from three with about 2.75 threes a game, and making all his free throws. Chris Paul is out there proving a point, and he only has 3 turnovers this entire time. Chris Paul wants y'all to know that he should have won MVP, at least in his mind. And I like it. I love that he's coming with that competitive nature and letting Devin Booker not have to cook as much. He's taking some of the pressure off Devin. Devin Booker is still putting up some really ridiculous numbers at 21, 18, 28 last 3 games. Chris Paul's basically telling us that, hey, I should have got an MVP. And these numbers are great. And you're averaging 21, 11, and 5 in this series while shooting 57% from the field, 75% from 3, and 100% from the free throw line. For the season, my man, you weren't the MVP. But you were a hell of a player. And we can appreciate that. Still makes you the 3rd greatest point guard in league history. You should definitely be happy with that as well. So college football had themselves a very busy week. The main headline should be about the Senate Commerce Committee with the federal government having a hearing with select witnesses to discuss the name, image, and likeness potential, legislation that could come across for the nation, for college football players and their ability to actually make money off of who they are. And so let's talk about that first. I'll have another episode that will be linked at the end of this that will talk about the other big headline that hit college football literally 2 days later. And I'll explain why that actually is kind of interesting as well. So with college football, it was a busy week. The Senate Commerce Committee held some hearings on June 9th, which was Wednesday. And they wanted to discuss about putting together the framework for a federal law or nationwide set of laws around players being able to profit off of their name, image, and likeness. Now, the Senate Commerce Committee, the Senate Committee actually included some groups of coaches and NCAA officials. And the one thing that I did notice from this, notably absent from all of this, was actual NCAA players. Now, if you recall back when everything was going on with the coronavirus pandemic and college football was potentially canceled, a lot of players kind of got together. You had the Pac-12 United movement, the Big Ten had a movement as well. And they were basically wanting to get paid. If they're going to play in a pandemic to make other people money, they want to make money too. And so this has been a hot button topic for a while, where everyone is discussing why players should be paid and why they shouldn't. And believe me, leave me with all your rebuttals on why they shouldn't get paid. I don't want to hear it at this point. We've gotten way past that. Things need to be moving forward. So there's a few notable things that came from this hearing. I kind of want to point them out and talk through what it seems like the issues are and what could come forth when it comes to the NIL bills potentially being passed at a federal level due to the state. So Gonzaga's head coach, Mark Few, was at the hearing, and he pointed out one thing, and this is what he said, and I quote, a system for NIL without federal law to protect the recruiting environment could lead to disastrous consequences. And I'll give him this. Mark Few is 100% correct. Now, Coach Few wasn't coming to this with this should not happen. He's more so saying that we need to hurry up and have something in place. For some reason, the NCAA doesn't feel like they need to put it in place, but we need to have something in place before July 1 hits and things really, Pandora's box really gets opened. And this is what I mean. What he's talking about is that 6 states have passed legislation to where athletes can profit from their NIL, name, image, and likeness, and it will all go in effect in July. 6 of those will go in effect in July, basically 3 weeks from now. 5 states, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, as well as New Mexico, will have theirs kick in July 1, while Arizona's is set to kick in July 23rd. Not sure why the 23rd, but I'm not here to try to speculate on that. But then there's another 12 states that have also passed some legislation that will go in effect over the next 4 years. The NCAA's argument has been that they can't supersede state law, and so them putting together some sort of framework and everything, it would be dependent upon what the states want to do. And so they need the feds to basically tell them what to do in this situation. And obviously, I'm not smart enough to understand why. So we're going to assume that they are working in good faith, when in all actuality, we know that they're not acting in good faith whatsoever. But they need the feds to pass something. And so this is where we're at today. Well, the next thing that's going to happen is the Senate's going to have another hearing, probably another few set of hearings. And the next one, which is scheduled for June 17th, will actually have players present. Well, they will give their opinions on name, image, and likeness and how things should go. Because they're trying to put together the framework, and the goal, it appears, is to have something passed federally before July 1 when the other states do it. Because, like I said, Few has some great points with this. Those 6 states that are going to pass something July 1, that is a recruiting advantage because they can tell their players, hey, you can make money off your name, image, and likeness with us. Even though I talked about this with Georgia and their legislation where they were saying that they're going to allow schools to take a portion of their money, or schools have the option to take a portion of these players' money and redistribute it to other sports, which is probably the most egregious thing. Just so freaking asinine to even think to do that. But of course, the whole goal here is to keep the players broke. So if you take the money away from them, it takes away a lot of their power, even though we're seeing major flexes in power with the transfer portal, and I love the chaos behind it. But anyway, besides that, few on the recruiting advantages is really spot on, because they can tell those kids that exact statement, and then from there, the other schools can't really say anything. Like, he's in Washington. He's built a pretty good powerhouse at Gonzaga, and they've been consistent winners. They just can't win championships, which is okay. It's just they're for them, getting there on a regular basis, getting deep in the playoffs, in the NCAA tournament on a regular basis is a big deal. And for a lot of other schools, they just want to be competent. That's really what matters. And so when it comes to recruiting, it's going to be tough to get an occasional 5-star player here and there when they can go to any of these other 6 states or the other 12 states once they pass their legislation to actually get paid for who they are. Doing little things whenever they find time to do it. But doing little things like camps, doing social media campaigns and just putting their name on stuff. They'll have the option to be able to participate in a lot of that stuff, which to me is something they should have been able to do from the beginning. They're the celebrities. They're the ones that are putting these schools, even though the schools are the names we pay attention to the most, they're the reason why we care about the schools. Schools that aren't winning, we don't really care about. The brand. And so the argument that, college football is about the name and it's about the school is ridiculous, because there's some argument to that. There's some truth to that, but we have to remember that usually winning is the reason why people go to some of these schools. Perfect example. I know Alabama, they saw a massive increase in enrollment and applications to go to that school because of all the championships they were winning under Nick Saban. Do you think students were just going to go there while they were a losing program? No. School kids growing up enjoy seeing the schools on TV and they want to root for those schools. So a lot of them will go to some of these schools just because of the name of the school, not because of programs they have or anything. They'll go just because they know that they're going to root for a school that has a national championship. So yes, all these universities have built-in fan bases every year that comes in. And so because of that, yes, the school will be able to profit from the opportunity of winning. But we also got to remember that the players are the ones that are playing on the field, on the court, in the arena, and they're the reason why they're winning. So next week, we'll have another hearing with players. We actually hear their side of things, and we can move hopefully forward and get some legislation put in. I'm just hoping that they don't screw these players over by trying to control how much money they can make, because I don't care what any of you say. If you go to school on an academic scholarship and you get a job and the academic scholarship has extra money in it and you take the money, no one's telling you that you have to redistribute it to other kids so that they can get a fair shot at said scholarships. They don't care. They don't care that if your parents make millions of dollars and you get an academic scholarship, they're not going to say, well, you shouldn't take this academic scholarship because your parents can pay for it. They don't care. That's the only thing we don't care about. We only care about controlling these kids, which is ridiculous. And so next up, I want to talk about the funny thing that happened a couple of days later and how the NCAA found a way to bury this NIL story. Coming up in a minute. So earlier I talked about how the NCAA was taking attention away from themselves by putting out some big news basically Friday. It's funny is that on Fridays is usually the day that news is put out and news they want to have out, but they want it buried in the news cycle because of the weekend coming through. They usually put it out like on a Friday evening. That's usually the best time to put out news that you don't want anybody to talk about. Because, I mean, if you think about it, do you talk about, do you have the time are you really going to talk about stuff over the weekend? If it's not something that's just massive, the news stations, you're not really tuning the news. You're busy on the weekends. You're off work. So a lot of us don't want to sit on the couch and consume that type of news. We may read an article here and there in the evening, but for the most part, it's the weekend. It's beautiful weather outside. If it's not, then you may be stuck in. But for the most part, when the weather's nice, you're trying to get out and about. And that's what the NCAA banks on when it comes to, well, actually every news station banks on the information that gets out there. Their whole goal is to, if they do it on a Friday evening, this is my personal opinion, they do it so that no one pays attention to it until maybe Monday. And hopefully something over the weekend happens that buries it even further before the Monday news cycle hits. Well, here we are. We have some news that I think that's going to be talked about not only throughout the weekend, but all of next week to bury the most important news of last week from the NCAA. College football is looking at expanding the playoffs to 12 games instead of the 4 that they have going on right now. So they have a committee of 4. They met with a goal of talking about expanding the playoffs from 4 teams to 12, and that will be considered by the College Football Management Committee next week. So this group that they had, these four individuals they had working together to discuss this and try to figure out what the framework could initially look like to present it, was the commissioners from the SEC, the Big 12, and the Mountain West, as well as the athletic director from Notre Dame. So they're preparing to recommend this new format of 12 teams to make the NCAA playoffs. Yeah, you should be excited because this is actually pretty big news, and I think it's really cool that they're going to go this direction. I thought, personally, my guy RJ Young had put out with the number 1 show on at Fox Sports, he mentioned he wants 16, and I can respect that. I thought 12 was probably a better number, and this is the number that they're going with, and I'm going to point out why. So what exactly does a 12-game playoff look like? So let me break this down really quick, and then I'll kind of give you some of my opinions, some of my analysis behind it. So this is based upon reporting from Nicole Albach and the staff over at The Athletic, which they do a fantastic job. She's amazing at this. So this is what the 12-game team format will look like. First off, there will be the 6th highest ranked conference champions, as well as 6 at-large spots. So just because you win your conference championship does not mean you will be in the playoffs. You still have to be highly ranked. So that prevents schools from being 9-3 or 8-4, winning their conference championship and actually making it into the playoffs. Conference championship does not guarantee it unless you're one of the highest ranked out of all of them. There's 10 of them. The Group of 5 and the Power 5. As long as you're in the top 6, you will, ranking wise, you will make it into the playoff. And then you'll have the 6 at-large spots. The 4 highest rated conference champions will actually get a first round bye, meaning the first week of the playoffs, they don't play. I like that. Teams 5 through 12 will play home games. They'll play at their home stadiums, and it will be hosted by the higher ranked teams, which is even better. The quarters and semifinals will be played in bowl games around January 1st. And then the start time, we don't know as of yet. That's still something that's kind of being hashed out, I guess you could say. So let's unpackage some of this, because the information I just gave you kind of doesn't mean anything to you all. Kind of want to understand, okay, what does that mean? Like, give me the meat and potatoes behind this. What does this really tell us? So let's unpackage it. So because of the hearings about the name, image, and likeness, which I talked about before, the NCAA felt the need to drop this bombshell of information, something that they know will rally up the troops and get all of the fans excited, so that we can ignore the fact that the players are not being compensated. They're also finding a way to make more money and still not wanting to pay the players. Think about how much money that they make in these bowl games. They're going to make a ton more, and are not going to find a way to give any of the money to the players, which is pretty ridiculous. So we're going to be talking about this weekend and throughout next week, because next week is when the actual management committee meets, and then we'll hear them make a decision. And when they make that decision, guess what? We're going to be talking about it even more, which will drown out June 17th, which is when college football players will actually meet with the Senate Commerce Committee and talk about name, image, and likeness. We'll forget all about that, unfortunately. I'm not going to let anybody, because I'm going to talk about it next week too. But that's going to be something that most fans are going to forget, which the NCAA's whole goal was to do that. So anyway, meat and potatoes. Let's dive into this. The NCAA will have winners and losers with this. And that's the unfortunate thing. There are winners, there are going to be losers. And these are the ones that I believe will see the biggest benefits. So your winners are the Group of 5. Now, the Group of 5 teams, these conferences, the Mountain West, the Sun Belt, MAC, all of that jazz, will now have the opportunity to get their doors blown off by Alabama, just like everybody else. Congratulations. Because I'm not going to lie, last year I felt like Cincinnati should have went ahead and got that spot and got blown out by Alabama. Thought it would have been fair. Shouldn't have put Notre Dame in there along with Clemson. I thought it was been better to just see one of those teams get in there and just watch them get blown out. Because irregardless of getting blown out, that may get a kid hyped to say, you know what? I don't want to go to this bigger school. I want to go there and see if we can knock off Goliath. Let's us beat David. We want to do that. They didn't get an opportunity. So now 12, they got this chance. So the group of 5 is going to be the biggest winner out of all of it because they're going to have a chance of having more teams out there. Max Olson, also from The Athletic, had put together a list on Twitter about the last 4 playoffs and what it would have looked like if we had this format. And it's actually pretty cool. I'll make sure to get some pictures posted or whatnot so you all can see what that looks like. But it was pretty dope. The next winner is going to be football fans because we get more football. It's going to be more football, another weekend, more meaningful games. Add this, the regular season is going to matter a lot more than it did before. How, you ask? Someone was actually talking about this on Twitter and a few other places. I've seen people mention this. They're like, okay, if they expand to this, this just means that teams are going to, inflate their schedule by having a whole bunch of cupcakes for their out of conference schedules or whatnot. Well, the problem with that is that that's not going to help your strength of schedule argument as well as your argument for your rankings. If you're playing cupcakes and then you run through your conference, but you play nobody really even in your conference, you're not going to get ranked high. That's going to be the difference maker right there. Even though I always argue the fact that you play who's in front of you. You can only play who's in front of you. You still got to find a way to get some of those good games, even if they're lower tier Power 5 teams in those Group of 5 games and blow their doors out. That way you can show, yes, we could probably compete with them. So strength of schedule is going to be important to make sure you're ranked high. So we should see out-of-conference schedules actually get beefed up more now in comparison to not. Because if you have a strong out-of-conference schedule and you still lose your conference championship game, you can still get that at large because you're still a really good team. You just weren't good enough to beat that team on that given Saturday. Another group that's got to win is going to be the one-loss teams. Imagine this. Alabama plays against my Tennessee Volunteers in the conference championship. They're both undefeated. They wouldn't be undefeated because if they play each other the third Saturday in October. That's not the point. Tennessee plays Alabama. Tennessee has 1 loss. Alabama's undefeated. And they face each other in the conference championship. And Tennessee blows the doors out of them the second time they play. Alabama, who probably has blown out somebody in their out-of-conference schedule, is still going to make probably the at-large spot. But Tennessee will actually still make it as a 1-loss conference champion. So Alabama losing that 1 game in the conference championship won't hurt them from making the tournament because they know that they're a really good team and they did great all season long and only lost that 1 game in the championship. So teams losing in the conference championship game won't get affected as much, which is dope. The TV networks and the home stadiums are also the last 2 are going to get the biggest win out of this. They're going to make so much money off of this. I mean, especially if you're hosting a game. Like, think about this. Cincinnati hosting Georgia in Cincinnati for the playoff first round because they're ranked higher. That would be so dope for them. That's going to be great for Cincinnati, for the school. They're going to have a ton of people traveling to that. It's going to get a whole bunch of national attention and the opportunity for them to even be able to, get more recruits' attention because of that. That's a big deal for them. And the TV network's making these packages. Who's going to lose out on this, though? Let's talk about the losers. We'll wrap this bad boy up. The number 1 loser is the players. This is why. They're still not getting paid, but they're going to play more football. I don't care about what any of you say when it comes to this piece. Period. You cannot argue against this point with me. You'll never win an argument with me on this because I can point out all the hypocrisy behind it, all the BS behind it. You're never going to be able to tell me the players shouldn't get paid, especially if they're playing more games and bringing in more money. It's ridiculous and it's preposterous that we actually think they should not be getting paid. It's ridiculous. Just remember that. It's ridiculous. I don't care about scholarships. Scholarships don't mean nothing. They can't work. They don't have time to work. And hell, most of them don't even have time to get the majors that they want to unless they are a top tier player that they have the clout or the leverage to be able to do what they want to. Like Josh Dobbs he's super smart and he wanted to be a astrophysicist, or he went into did a internship at NASA. I mean, dude's super smart, but he had that. He's starting quarterback, so they're gonna let him do what he wants to do. They're gonna be more flexible with him. But other players don't have that opportunity. There's reports of other players talking about how coaches recommended they take these fluff classes to guarantee A, their eligibility, B, that they have extra time to focus on football more so than academics, even though we claim that they're, student athletes. Neither here nor there. But this is the thing that pisses me off about it, and this is how we know that they're losing. Because the most popular sports in college sports are the sports that are dominated by minority, mainly black athletes. And the money that they bring in, the revenue they bring in, funds the other sports that are not very popular, which are more dominant with your white athletes. And so the black kids are working their tails off, bringing in all this money. The money's being shifted to the white sports so that they can participate, in which I have no problem with them doing that to make sure that there's more opportunity for scholarships and kids to get educations that participate as high-level athletes. But it's ridiculous that they're bringing in the billions that they're doing and still not being paid. I think that they all should be able to get paid. That's it, period, point blank. Scholarships, it's a barter system. That doesn't make any sense to me. At this point, where they are at today, the hundreds of millions that each conference bring in. Because they sure can bring up the price of coaches. Coaches are definitely getting paid. I mean, Jimbo Fisher got, $10 million a year down there at Texas A&M? But y'all cool with that. I mean, he's the coach. Ridiculous. The other losers in this, Notre Dame, BYU. Because if you notice, when I said that the 4 teams that are eligible for the bye week, conference champions, neither one of them are in the conference. So this might actually be a win for fans because it may lead them to actually join a conference, which would be a good thing for them, in my personal opinion. I'd love to see Notre Dame in the ACC full time and maybe BYU join the Big 12 because they could use more teams. They're the Big 12 with 10 teams. Since the Big 10 has, 14 teams? Something like that. But anyway, you can get Notre Dame to join the ACC, maybe even get Louisville to join the Big 12 along with BYU, and then boom, you got yourself 12 teams, and it's more of a realistic division type setup. I don't know. But that may be the winner for fans because these independents will have to make a choice. Either they want to try to make it for the at-large spots and hope that they get ranked high enough for it by playing actual competition, or they're going to go ahead and join a conference, which I don't see them joining conferences. I can see them still just focusing on the at-large spots, so they're guaranteed to play the first round, which for them, hosting a game would actually be pretty good for them. That's a lot of money to be made. They won't have to wait to go to the bowl games with the quarterfinals and the semifinals like the other big schools will once we get to that point. And so that's really it, your winners and your losers when it comes to this. So the NCAA is looking at going 12 games. Pretty excited. As a college football fan, I love to see this. I'm amped for other opportunities to go watch more games. I just really like instead of them focusing on expanding this first, let's figure out a way to pay the players so that the expansion is worth it. That's all I'm saying.